In this video, we're going to put the finishing touch on this guitar. Now that the guitar is reassembled, all the strings are on it, we have to do a setup and intonation. That means we have to get the strings to the optimal height above the frets. That's called the action. So we have to set the action. And after that, we have to adjust the intonation so that all of the notes on the guitar, not just the open strings, but all of the fretted notes are also in tune. Here, what I'm doing is listening for any fret buzz. Fret buzz indicates that the strings are too low. And in this case, the strings were in fact too low. They were too close to the frets, and that causes some fret buzz. I'm measuring the height of the strings before I start adjusting them, and yeah, they were about 1.5 millimeters from the frets. That's a very low action. Now that action is possible, but the neck has to be nearly perfect for that to happen. And in this neck is very nice, especially for an inexpensive guitar, but it has one little flaw, and that is it's slightly warped. It's slightly curved. If you look down the neck, you can see that it twists on its way from the nut down to the body. It twists slightly. So that compromises the high E string, and this setup actually would have been even quicker if that twist wasn't there. But this was a pretty quick and easy setup, despite the fact that there was a slight twist to the neck. So I use a truss rod wrench or an Allen key to loosen the truss rod so that it induces more curvature in the neck. That curvature is called relief, and that gives me a bit more action. And for the most part, it removed the buzz. Now, a little bit of buzz is okay, in my opinion. As long as it doesn't sound through the amp, I'm happy with it. A little bit of buzz tells me that I've optimized the action to its lowest possible point. The grub screws for the saddles to adjust the saddle's height use Allen wrenches, and I keep the Allen wrenches that are the most common sizes for those grub screws. I keep them in a Nintendo tin because why not? Right now, I'm measuring the height of the low E string above the fret. You can't see it, but I'm down at eye level, so I'm kind of looking across the frets, across the strings. And what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the saddle with my right hand using that Allen wrench so that the bottom of the low E string is 2 millimeters above the top of the 12th fret. That is a pretty universally accepted starting place for good low action. And I'm repeating that process for every string. This way, every string is the same distance from the top of the 12th fret. Now, it's very important that you do the adjustment for the action, adjust the truss rod and adjust the height of the saddles before you try to do any intonation. I'll explain why in more detail in just a few minutes. After adjusting the saddles, I'm going to retune the guitar, and then I'm going to play the guitar a bit to make sure the buzzes are gone and it feels nice to play. I'm going through every fret up to the 15th fret just to make sure I don't hear any dead notes anywhere on the fingerboard. Now it's time to adjust the intonation. That is adjusting the length of the strings so that all of the notes, the open string and all of the fretted notes, are in tune. See, when you tune your guitar, you're just tuning the open string. And you're hoping that your guitar is intonated well so that all of the other fretted notes are also in tune. But you can't take that for granted. It's important that you check that from time to time. I usually do it right after I've changed the strings. But you want to check it to make sure that when you play a note on a fret, it's also in tune. So a good fret to check is the 12th fret because it's an octave of the open string. So what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the 12th fret note on the E string, which is an E. I want it to be perfectly in tune, just like the open string is. And as you see there, the 12th fret note is a bit sharp. So to counteract that, I have to lengthen the string. When the note is sharp, the string is too short. So I'm lengthening the string by using my Phillips screwdriver, and that pulls the saddle backwards, making the string slightly longer. Then I have to retune the string open. Then I test the note on the 12th fret to see if it's in tune. And it is in tune now, so we're good. Now I'm going to move on to the next strings. But here's a little shortcut. If your action is consistent from one string to the next, your saddles will follow a diagonal line from the low E string. I'm kind of indicating it there with the screwdriver. You do intonations enough, you kind of get a sense for the angle of that diagonal line. So before I even test any strings, I'm going to just pull those saddles back to what I visually think is the most common diagonal line. And let me tell you, I got very lucky here because I nailed it for 3 strings. Normally, I just want to get in the ballpark, and I'm happy with that. But if you look here, the intonation is perfect based on that just rough estimation that I made. So very lucky on my part. And I nailed it again on the D string. It shows you that experience and practice does have a lot of value because visually that looked right to me and it actually turned out to be correct on the tuner. Now the G string is going to be set back from where the D string is, but usually a good starting point is to just bring it back to where the E string is and begin there. So instead of measuring it first, I just bring it right back. I know that that saddle is not in the correct spot, so it's not even worth measuring it. I'm going to bring it back all the way back to where the E string would be, where the E string is now. Then retune the string, and then check it at the 12th fret, and once again nailed it. Most of the time I'm close, but it's rare that I nail string after string after string with this kind of estimation, so I was pretty happy with that. Now likewise, from G, B, and E, it also usually follows a diagonal path. So I'm going to estimate that path and move those saddles preemptively like I did with the E, A, and D strings. And once again, I got very, very lucky. So I should play the lottery today. but my luck runs out on the high E string, and that's because of that twisted neck I told you before. Everything about this high E string is a little bit out of whack. So that means I had to adjust the saddle to an unusual position. But you know what? That's why these saddles are adjustable, because every guitar is a little bit different. Every guitar is made out of a different piece of wood. Every guitar is going to age a bit different. So to have adjustable saddles is definitely a lifesaver. On an acoustic guitar, you don't have adjustable saddles. So as the guitar ages and changes its shape, the intonation usually gets worse. It's one of the quirks of older guitars, older acoustic guitars. But on electric guitars, the saddles are almost always adjustable. Now, let's talk about why you have to do this process last. You have to set the intonation last because the intonation is affected by the height of the strings over the frets. It's affected by the action. The reason why it's affected by the action is because when you press a string to a fret, you are stretching that string. It doesn't feel like you're stretching it very much because you're only moving it 2 millimeters, but you are in fact stretching that string. So when you stretch that string, you are making that note go sharp. So we have to compensate that sharpness out of it by lengthening the string a little bit to make it go a little bit flat. That way, when the string arrives at the fret, it's perfectly in tune. So as you can imagine, if you have higher action or lower action, that will affect how much sharper the note gets and how much you have to counteract that sharpness with lengthening the string. So always set your action first and then adjust your intonation. Now this guitar will sound in tune and play really great.